Hello there, welcome to my show, COVID-19 Update by Heerak for October 17, 2020. Um, Today is Saturday, and we're in middle of October, headed into the super spreader holiday of Halloween. You may be wondering how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands will be infected on Halloween night, and actually days and weeks leading up to Halloween, because Halloween parties start kind of early. Like Friday nights, you have Halloween parties like a week or 2 weeks before Halloween, even. Um, yeah, so some of you may be wondering how many hundreds of thousands of Americans will be infected around the super spreader, COVID-19 super spreader holiday of Halloween. But knowing that it's going to be a super spreader, you're still going to go. That's what people do, right? You go to a party, even if your mom tells you not to go to a party. If your mom and dad go on a trip and they said don't throw a party at home, you still throw a party, right? Knowing that you're going to get into trouble. It's just part of human nature to kind of do things that you know you will get into trouble for. And part of the reason for that is, original sin, if we want to look at it from a theological angle, because we have sin, everybody's born with sin. We want to break rules, whatever the rule may be. Um, so you have Robin Hood, who's considered the hero in folk literature in England. And Robin Hood is what? A criminal, right? He steals. I mean, that's a crime, grand theft. Um, he steals from the rich and gives to the poor, but he's a criminal because he's stealing, right? If somebody goes into your home in Arlington because you're a millionaire and steals your stuff and gives it to local United Methodist Church, soup kitchen, would you approve that? Would you say that's okay? That there's somebody in Arlington stealing from millionaire homes and giving it to a local United Methodist Church soup kitchen, or you know uh, some kind of poverty relief organization? Would you say that's okay? But that's what Robin Hood is. Robin Hood is a folk hero whom English people celebrated, but also Americans celebrate even now. And you might have seen the movie Robin Hood with Kevin Costner, a movie, from a while ago. But if you haven't seen it, you may want to see it. Um, it's a good movie. And they're making new Robin Hood movies every day. Not every day, but regularly. It feels like every day sometimes. You have so many stuff coming out about Robin Hood in poetry, literature, movie, film, in everyday conversation. And people who help the poor often have Robin Hood as their hero. They may not think consciously, he's a criminal. He's like a felon, right? Because he's stealing from people, private property. So he's a felon who knowingly commits felony in the name of helping the poor, right? And many of you may see Robin Hood as a hero. Why? Because you may think that helping the poor is so important that you can commit crimes against the rich to help the poor. And obviously, Robin Hood is a hero in American culture because most Americans think helping the poor may justify what Robin Hood is doing in the movies or in literature. And obviously, the rich people in Robin Hood's movies are always vilified, but everybody has good sides and bad sides. Everybody loves their children, whether they're millionaires or they're homeless, right? Um, so how people are treated are different based on what your relationship is to them. Like if you are part of a community, they may show you love, or they may protect you, or they may care about you. Whereas If you're outside of that community, they may mistreat you, they may call you names, they may even inflict violence upon you, you know? Um, so what community you belong to, what family you belong to, dictates how you are treated within that family or within that community, right? And there's a saying, blood runs thicker than water. Just because you're related to somebody, they will kind of look out for you against people who are not related to you. You know, it's like that within interreligious conflicts, right? Whenever religions go to war against other religions, they protect their own. And there's an us versus them conflict, and it shocks people because they're like, "But I thought you're my friend, but I'm part of this religion, and I'm going to stand up for somebody who's in this religion." And they may not say that or verbalize it, but they act in that way. And people who don't belong to that religion are often shocked by how interreligious identity or in-group identity functions in religious conflicts in America, in Europe, and throughout history of the Western civilization. People are often shocked by it when they experience it themselves. Although they read about Nazi Germany and in Spain in 1492 when all the Jews were expelled, um, by Christian rulers, but all the Christian citizens, went along with it. Um, and people read about it, study about it, but they're always shocked when it happens to them in their community or in their city or their town or their state or their country. And you see that throughout history of Western civilization. Because you could condemn somebody or condemn something in past history today, but tomorrow you may repeat the same thing that you condemned yesterday because it's part of your group identity, and you will go along with your group. And that's been part of historical flow, what we call the historical prejudice. And in history we say no one can overcome their historical identity. They are products. Everyone is a product of their culture, their history, their identity, their group identity. And so people often talk about that, especially in historical research, when certain things cause certain individuals and groups to act in certain ways. Um, you know, um, the group may understand what is happening, but people outside of that group may not quite understand why that group is rallying around an individual who is representing that group. So it's a surprising thing for a lot of people. It's kind of like you have uncle who's blatantly racist against Koreans, but you're gonna get together with him in family gatherings and be nice to him and be pleasant because he's part of your family. 150 people get together in family reunions regularly. He's your uncle, and he may be, you may talk about him as the uncle who's racist against Koreans. And Ed was telling me this. His uncle who lives in San Francisco just hates Koreans. I mean, he doesn't hate black people, he doesn't hate Latinos, he doesn't hate Chinese, but he just hates Koreans because of the Korean War that he fought in. And I guess he might have had bad experiences with North Korean soldiers or whatever, but he hates all Koreans. And people have that, and you may have an uncle or father or brother or sister or son who hates a certain race or certain types of people, however they define it, for whatever reason or experience that they had. Um, but you're going to tolerate it because he's your brother or she's your sister, he's your uncle or she's your aunt, and so you may badmouth them once in a while, but family's family. You're gonna kind of rotate around the social settings of the family, right? Because your mom may say, "Hey, I know your you know, Uncle Bob hates Koreans, but he's still your uncle. He's my brother, so you're gonna be nice to him." And then you love your mom, and you're just gonna be nice to him because of your mom. And that's what human relationships are all about. Every human being is flawed in a certain way. And, to expect everybody to be perfect is unreasonable, because to be human is to be imperfect, however that is defined. And so, expecting people to be not racist is part of problem that you create in a society. Uh, Society filled with imperfect human beings, right? People are going to be people based on their experiences, and you cannot make anybody perfect. You cannot change people. Um, and you people who've dated or married, you know what that means on a personal level, how you cannot change another person. Um, and so, if you are dogmatic and you're like just looking at the world in black and white terms, you probably get divorced because you cannot change people and you want them to change. And so I see like the whole societal discourse on wanting a raceless society as being asinine, because people are going to be people. People are flawed. People are going to always have biases against others. Uh, you cannot expect them to be free of bias. To be human is to have biases. To be human is to have prejudices. To be human is to be racist. If you're with Latinos may be racist against certain groups. They may say certain things that you may not like it personally, but you're going to hear it around you within the context where only Latinos are there. And that's the same with like black people. In a setting where there are only black people, they may say something about Chinese people. So and that's like with every ethnic group. In the setting where there are Chinese people, they may say something about other groups. And so um, to be human is to be imperfect, and also to be human is to have biases, and that is because identity is often defined against another group, right? Against another individual. When you say I am American, that means you're saying I am not um, European, right? Generally, I mean there are exceptions to the rule, but when you call yourself something, you're defining yourself against another group or other groups in plural. Um, and so today, it's a National Pasta Day, and for us in America, and for those of you watching this show from outside of America, uh, you know, uh, you may not understand this, but we in America see pasta as American, but actually it's Italian food, right? But we say National Pasta Day, spaghetti. It's like American food. That's how we see it. We don't see it as like Italian food. I mean, we could, if you want to get technical, it's Italian, but pasta actually came from China, technically, right? Marco Polo brought it from China to Italy. They didn't have spaghetti before Marco Polo. They didn't have any pasta. So, in a sense, even the pasta in Italy was taken or borrowed or adapted. You can use negative or positive word depending on how you view Chinese culture, maybe, or Italian culture. If you're very proud of Italian culture, you can say, well, we perfected it, and you can say that like that. So there are different ways of talking, and even the words that you use can be a window into your individual identity and your group identity. Um, so there are asinine people who think like world is black and white, like they think at the kindergarten level. And that's not true. People, the world is very complicated. Different people have different loyalties, different identities, and if you push and push us versus them identity, they will side with their own identities, kind of like during Civil War. Even though General Robert E. Lee was the Supreme Commander in Chief of the United States military forces, that's Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, he decided to fight for Virginia, which was in the Confederacy, against the United States of America, because his whole family lived in Virginia. If his family lived in Washington, D.C., or if his family lived in Pennsylvania, he would not have fought for Virginia or for Confederacy. And that kind of highlights why people do the things that they do. The only reason Robert E. Lee fought against the United States of America and joined the Confederacy was because he's Virginian and his family's, everybody in his family was in Virginia. And I'm sure his Virginia family members wanted him to fight for Virginia. And you are influenced by your family and what they encourage you to do. And that's how it is, right? And that's how it is when there's a conflict between Christians and Jews. That's how it is when there's conflict between Jews and Muslims. That's how it is when there's a conflict between Hindus and Muslims. And that's how all conflicts are. Eventually, people will fight with their identity, their in group, because in a sense, they are prisoners of their own identity. They can't escape it. And that's what history often talks about. Postmodernists, the literary theorists have talked about that. You can never escape your group. And there are exceptions to the rule, but the exceptions prove the rule. And so there are a lot of things that happen in history that you don't understand, and you may be very judgmental and say, oh, they were wrong, they're evil. And there are a lot of judgmental people in the world, in both Republican Party, Democratic Party. You know, everybody's judgmental, you know, when they come speak about other people, right? People who are not in their in group. So nobody is innocent when it comes to being judgmental. Everybody's judgmental. It's just you're judgmental against the others who are the other in terms of your own individual group identity. And so, United States of America is 300 million people are Christian. So over 90% of America is Christian. So United States of America is unified through Christianity, regardless of your race, because 90% of America is Christian. So whether you're Filipino, whether you're Korean, whether you're Chinese, whether you're Indian, whether you're Black or Latino or white, majority are like Christians in America. And so people are united by a Christian identity. And, you know, some would say people are defined by Christian identity, or they are unified by anti-Semitism, Christian anti-Semitism that all Christians share. Um, so, you know, that's something that you cannot change, right? Group identities cannot be changed because they are part of a historical force, meaning they are not just what's happening now. It's what's been happening for thousands of years. So Christians who were Buddhists, who converted to Christianity after immigrating to America by the domestic missionary work of Korean churches in America, yes, they were Buddhists until they came to America and converted to Christianity and got baptized. And they were associated with the Buddhist identity that spans thousands of years in Korea. But once they become Christian, they link up to the 2,000 years of historical force of Christian identity that started with Jesus, you know, and so that becomes a dominant impact because Koreans who are Buddhists who convert to Christianity go to Korean church every Sunday. They socialize with Korean Christians primarily. You know, you socialize around your in-group, and in the United States of America, people's closest friends are people in their church. So that's why religion is so important in America. Because you go to work from Monday to Friday, but you just go to work. They're not your friends, they're your coworkers. Your sacred time is like Sunday when you go to church with, and you have your real friends, and they are from your religion. And so, obviously, if you're Jewish in America, you don't understand this because you're Jewish. You think like, you know, people at your work love you, you know, they don't, but they pretend because you have to get along with people. So Christians pretend they love Jews at work, but they don't, you know. Um, it's just Christians are part of the 2,000-year prejudice that they're part of. So, you know, if you assume that 300 million Christians are all anti-Semitic, you're probably right, you know, because, you know, you cannot go against the historical force, you know, 2,000 years of historical force. You cannot get rid of it. You cannot burn all the Christian books. You cannot burn the Bible, you know. So if you assume that all Christians in America are anti-Semitic, you're right. Yeah, anti-Semitism unites all Christians in America. Um, and that's the single most unifying force in America, I would say, probably anti-Semitism. And so that's why we never had a Jewish president, despite the fact we had all these influential Jews, powerful Jews, who were appointed, but they were not elected to presidency. And there are some people who are appointed, elected in areas that have a lot of Jews, or or they have a lot, party backing. And in certain areas where there are a lot of Jews, they may vote you in or whatever. But anti-Semitism is everywhere and it resurfaces. And so you should expect it. It's everywhere. In Arlington, everybody who votes Democrat who are Christians are anti-Semitic. Whether they deny it or not, that's irrelevant. If there's an ever Jews versus Christian conflict, you will see what I mean. Because there isn't an open public conflict, you don't see the anti-Semitism of liberal progressive Christians. But when there is an open public conflict between Jews and Christians, you will see open anti-Semitism of liberal Democrats, liberal progressives who are in the United Methodist Church, Catholic Church, Presbyterian Church, all the liberals in Arlington, Falls Church, Fairfax County, city of Alexandria will be very anti-Semitic in any open conflict between Jews and Christians. That's like 100% guaranteed. And we call that a historical prejudice or historical force. And obviously, when everybody's getting along, you're not going to have conflicts showing itself, right? And what we call, latent or hibernating anti-Semitism. Every Christian in Virginia's 8th district, Virginia's 11th district, Virginia 10th district, who's Christian, you can assume to be anti-Semitic. They have what we call inactive anti-Semitism, but that will become active in a group conflict between Jews and Christians. That's 100% guaranteed. You will see if any kind of public or open conflict between Jews start, you will see it in every company, every factory, every university, every social network. You'll see it. So that's just life, it's when people are in a conflict, people will side with their in group. That's just, you can't avoid it. It's just part of human experience. Sociologists can explain it to you from a sociology angle. Anthropologists can explain it to you from an anthropological angle. Psychologists can explain it to you in a psychological angle. Historians can explain it to you from a historical angle. Politicians, political scientists can explain it to you in political science angles. And that's just the way things are. And that's something you cannot escape. The force of history is something you cannot escape. It's greater than you. It's greater than your in-group. It's power of history. And so, people are always shocked when history asserts itself over individual initiative, group initiative, even popular fad movements like Black Lives Matter that goes and fizzles out after a few days, a few months. People are shocked when historical prejudices reassert themselves and becomes even more strong, even more dominant. But you cannot get rid of history. You cannot get rid of group identity. You are a product of your history, whether you recognize it or not. You're a product of what you have experienced in your life, and you are a product of your individual identity. And for Americans, their religious identity is very important. But it's like that with everybody. You may not go to church for like 5 years. You may never have gone to a church for 5 years, but you still identify yourself as a Christian. That's America, and like people don't understand what that means, because they're not historians. They haven't studied history, different cases of where identity is laid, and then it surfaces and becomes explicit in individuals and in groups, and as you know, I'm a professional historian trained as a professional historian at UCLA's history department. So I understand this very, very well. I mean, I welcome open conflicts to test out my theory. You know, I love open conflicts because you see history at work, and I'm like right 100% of the time. You know, history is always right, and I know I'm a darn good historian because I test my history out in real life, and it always works the way I expected. Um, yeah, so I welcome open conflicts. That's the way to test historical process. In group identity, historical prejudices. And that's why I like to see historical conflicts, because you see history processes in real life at the current time that you studied, which happened, 1939 Germany or whatever. You see it developing in your own country. For example, um, and that's kind of exciting to see history happen. Yeah, you cannot escape history. Just that's fact of life. History is greater than you. History is greater than me. History is greater than everyone you know, and they don't even know that until they become part of that historical process, right? Um, yeah, I assure you, like Germans in Germany did not start off saying, "Oh, we're going to kill all our Jewish friends, our Jewish in-laws, our Jewish business partners, Jewish neighbors" in the Holocaust. Do you think every German citizen who's not Jewish started out intending to do that? You know what I'm saying? A lot of people think like they're kindergartners. People are not that simple. People cannot overcome their historical prejudices. People cannot overcome historical processes. People cannot overcome their group identities. It just doesn't happen. And that's why I like group conflicts, and I welcome all group conflict, because 90% of America is Christian. So I know I'll win. You know what I'm saying? There's zero chance I'll lose. In the long run. So yeah, I mean, if you belong to another religion, please attack me, and you will see what happens. I love history at work. Anyway, as you know, I'm an independent candidate for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District, and my motto is to bring America back to God. And in Arlington, we have 100 different nations, but the majority of Arlington is Christian. Um, given any us versus them conflict, I'm sure all the Christians will side with me. So, what I'm saying? I mean, I'm 100% confident. I'm a historian, so I speak as an expert. My confidence is not like, I have a feeling. No, I studied history, so I know what will happen. So, yeah, so I mean, liberal, conservative doesn't matter. Identity is identity, group identity is group identity, historical prejudices are historical prejudices. Everybody is part of it. They can't control it. Yeah, it's kind of like if you're a father, the way you want to protect your daughter, your son, you know, um, it's a parental instinct. It's part of your animal nature. It's something you cannot control. It's just it's just part of you, and that's how historical prejudices are. Historical prejudices are in your DNA, and some people talk about that being your social DNA. Sociologists have started talking about social DNA. Like there are certain socializations that become part of your DNA to the extent that you may not recognize it, but you're part of it. Like it's in you, and you cannot separate yourself from yourself without dying. Um, this, your DNA is who you are. So people talk about their social DNA, and so you see like these asinine individuals, who try to remake society, and they think that it's a simple process. That's because they're not professional historians. They've never really studied history in depth, so they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, I mean, world is not that simple. You cannot treat the world using like black and white kindergarten rules on racism, on anti-Semitism, or whatever. People are complex. They have different loyalties, they have different reasons why they act the way they do, but they're all informed and guided and dictated by their experiences and their historical force that they don't even know about. And sociologists, as I've said, and anthropologists talk about social DNA. And even in the field of geography, they're beginning to talk about the concept of social DNA. Like you may not know that you have the breast cancer gene, but that's not going to change the fact that you're going to get breast cancer from your BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes that you have in your body. In the same way, you have social DNA, uh, and all Christians are anti-Semites in the sense that they have anti-Semitic DNA, social DNA. And some of you will get cancer, some of you won't. Um, there are certain conditions that trigger the BRCA1, BRCA2 to cause you to have breast cancer. Not everybody who has BRCA1 and BRCA2 get cancer, um, right? So there are certain triggers that cause your DNA to surface and control your body. So DNA processes, cellular regeneration processes. And the same thing with social DNA. There are certain triggers that will activate your social DNA to surface uh, and become visible, and that will become a part of your life and your activity. So, I'm a historian, so I don't treat history with very simple-minded concept like you can be a dictator and you can be a tyrant and you can force everybody to do what they want. And I see people who are trying to get rid of racism as being dictators and tyrants, trying to control people's behavior. First Amendment protects you to have the right to be an anti-Semite or you to be a racist. First Amendment protects that right. Because the founding fathers knew that they were very educated, um, and they studied philosophy, and they knew that you cannot change people, and that's why they created a perfect union, more perfect union, by allowing you to have your own views and to speak your mind, and that's protected under the law. But they're asinine individuals who want to get rid of racism, get rid of anti-Semitism. They think like you guys are like little children or you're slaves that they can order around, and they're asinine. They're like operating at a kindergarten level. People are who they are. You probably often heard your relatives, your father, your mother, your husband or wife say all kinds of stuff that you thought was a whoa. But people are that way. People are who they are. They'll say things, around you that they will not say around anyone else if you're intimate. And so, it's I see everybody who tries to get rid of racism or anti-Semitism as like being asinine. Jesus was a racist. He said a lot of racist things against Samaritans. Racism is not sin in the Holy Bible. Racism is not sin in the Old Testament. Racism is not sin in the New Testament. God is a racist. God chose Jews as his own chosen race and made it superior to all the other races. God's a racist in the Bible. Racism is not sin. So when I see like people trying to attack racism, it's just asinine, simple-minded people who don't understand God, who don't have a personal relationship with Jesus, who don't read the Gospels. Because you've read the Gospels, Jesus, and Jesus is racist. So people try to to fight a war against racism. They don't have a personal relationship with Jesus, obviously, because Jesus is a racist. I mean, if you don't like racists, then you wouldn't have a relationship with Jesus. But Jesus is a racist. But I know Jesus is a racist, but I love Jesus. Um, remember, racism is not sin, so Jesus is sinless. He could be a racist and be sinless because racism is not sin in the Holy Bible. You see what I'm saying? So like asinine kindergarten level people don't understand that. They think like, oh, you can't be a Christian if you're a racist, and these are like less than 1% of America's population, who are thinking in an asinine way, and they try to control you, like treat you like a slave and control your thoughts, control your behavior. It's not going to work. Jesus never, he taught you how to behave as a Christian, but not being a racist wasn't one of them. Jesus never taught his disciple not to be racist. So yeah, I mean, any Christian pastor who teaches you not to be a racist is not teaching the gospel, obviously, because Jesus is a racist. Jesus never taught anyone not to be a racist. There were people who were fighting racism at the time of Jesus, but Jesus refused to fight racism, and that's, that's his right as God to choose what he wants for people who follow him, disciples of Jesus. Um, but today is a National Pasta Day, so I hope you go and have a pasta. Um, actually, 942 people haven't died yet. It hasn't been quite 24 hours, so 942 people may die. It's more like 500-ish people have died so far. Since yesterday's show. But I'm recording this a little bit earlier today. So by the time it's 24 hours, it may be 942. It's summer. I mean, it's a Saturday. So, reporting may be delayed. People don't like to work on the weekend. So, people who are supposed to be reporting may be delayed, in reporting it. And Tasakans, people who update the data, they may be kind of relaxed on Saturdays. There are multiple factors for why the numbers can get delayed during the weekend. But in America, weekends are kind of sacred, right? So when you work in a weekend, you get paid higher because they know it's like you're working in a weekend, because weekends are sacred in America. It's part of American culture. Um, and that's why like hospitals have it's impossible to find people to work on weekends, because nurses don't want to work on weekends. They want to go out on a date. They want to spend time with their children, or they want to spend time with their husband, or they want to go to a church function, because a lot of churches have events on Sunday. I mean, Sunday you have worship, but you have a lot of events on Saturday at church. So church people, they socialize mostly around church, right? Their closest friends are generally at church. So this is America. So they like to do things on Saturday at their church, volunteer at their church, So people don't like to work in weekends, and so every hospital in America have problem finding nurses to work on a weekend. It's just part of American life. But it's like that with any job. But most jobs you don't work in the weekend, right? Um, but yeah. But when you work in a weekend, you get paid more because they know that nobody wants to work in a weekend. Um, but yeah, America's America, but it's like that in Europe too. It's like that in Asia. I guess it's a global thing. It's not just a American thing. Not wanting to work on weekend. A lot of people just don't want to work on weekend. But I like working on weekends. You get paid more. you know. Yeah. Um, yeah. So we have total death in America of 218,618 people, and we have these are people who have died. These are people. That's a quarter million people who have died, and I'm predicting that over 3 million people will die in the United States of America in the next 6 months from COVID-19 because cities are not shutting down. You need to shut down your city if COVID is proliferating, because these are people who are going to die. These are people with names who are going to die. Yeah, I mean, Black Plague killed 1/3 of Europe. So don't be surprised if COVID-19 eventually kills 1/3 of America, 100 million people. It could happen, you never know. I mean, nobody thought 218 people would die after 8 months, right? Did you think that 218,618 people would die after 8 months? So why do you think 100 million Americans can't die in the next 10 years from COVID, right? You have no scientific evidence to say that that won't happen. All right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible if we don't have a vaccine and we don't have a cure, and COVID-19 continues to be deadlier and deadlier and mutate, because we know everybody's getting infected. A lot of people are getting infected every day, and people's infections continue the virus 365 days a year. So it's not going to die off on its own because people are the carriers. And there are 330 million Americans, and only 8 million people have been infected so far. So this can go on until all 300 million 330 million Americans are infected, right? You could go on and on until everyone's infected. And because COVID-19 is mutating, even after everybody's infected, it still continue to go on. Because the mutated version may be so different from the original version that there could be a new wave of uh, infection that could infect 330 million people again. You got to remember, new people are being born every day, and they're aging. So even if you infect everybody now, who's 330 million who are living, in 10 years, you're going to have 10 years of new people being born who can also get infected. You see what I'm saying? So this thing can be forever. Don't expect it to go away. It's scientifically possible for 100 million people to die in, if this goes on and being deadly for decades. Yeah, and there's no reason for you to think that it won't continue to be deadly. HIV virus was discovered decades ago. It continues to be deadly. You get it, you could die from it. And there's no vaccine, there's no cure. Hepatitis C, there's no vaccine, and it's been around for decades. It's still deadly. They kill hundreds of thousands of people every year. Cancer has been around for decades. There's no cure for cancer. Um, there are treatments like radiation and chemotherapy, but still, hundreds of thousands of people die every year from cancer. So so don't think COVID-19 will go away. The difference between these and COVID-19 is COVID-19 is far more infectious and far more deadly. Um, but even this year, we are going to have 1.6 million people in America get cancer, diagnosed with cancer, and over 50% will die within the next 3 years. So maybe cancer is more deadly than COVID-19, to be honest with you, but because over 50% of you will die if you have cancer within the next 2 to 3 years. Whereas COVID-19 is death rate is at 3%. So I guess you could say it's more infectious. So cancer is not easy to get. You have to have genes, genetic inclination to get it, or you have to do things like smoke or drink a lot of alcohol or whatever. You can get liver cancer through cirrhosis of liver. You have to do something, or you have to have genes, or you have to have chemicals around you to get cancer. So it's harder to get, but COVID is easier to get to. So I guess the accurate way to look at it is COVID-19 is more infectious, but cancer is more deadly because more than 50% will definitely die within the next 2 to 3 years. That's 100% guaranteed. Yeah. So but I mean, not many of you will get cancer. Only 1.6 million people per year get cancer. We have 8,052,978 people so far who got COVID, and it's not a full year yet. Top 5 COVID-19 cases in Europe. Russia is number 1. And it's, they have 1,376,020 cases, 2% death rate, and it's 23,857 deaths. And, their death is growing, and you see all the top 5 European countries have double digits. And Europe used to be the continent of death, but top 5 in Latin America also have double digits, but the difference is now Brazil is in, not double digits, 5 digits. But Brazil is like 6 figures, right? They're over 150 millions that have died. And Mexico had over 80 million die so far. Most of their deaths were in the summer. And so now Latin America has claimed the title of being the continent of COVID-19 death. And Latin America may continue. But, don't rule out Europe yet. We have 6 months of flu season to go. And you may have, proliferating COVID-19 death to the extent that Europe may reclaim their title as the continent of COVID-19 death. Let's see. We'll talk about this more at length on May 2021. So Spain is number 2, and 4% death rate. And so 936,560 cases and 33,775 deaths so far. And obviously, they're going to have probably over a million deaths. Every single one of these countries will probably have over a million deaths by May. France has 876,342 cases, 4% death rate, 33,325 deaths. Remember, we're just entering the flu season. We have 6 months to go. ICUs are filling up in Paris area, in parts of France, and it's only October, and you have 6 months to go. So you can easily expect over a million people to die. Far above a million people probably will die. United Kingdom is 692,126 cases, 43,519 deaths, 6% death rate. Manchester, you need to shut down. If you don't shut down your city and force everybody to stay at home, you're going to have many people die in your city. That's what happened in every city in United States, United Kingdom. If you don't shut down your city, you're going to have tremendous number of people dying in your city. Maybe 60,000, maybe 100,000. Like New York City, I'm predicting over a million New Yorkers will die by May 2021. New York is not shutting down. If you don't shut down, COVID's going to spread. People are going to start dying. It'll be impossible to control at a certain point. Italy has 391,611 cases, 9% death rate, 36,427, and Italy sniping. Rome is in danger. We may have like a bunch of cardinals die off, like people in Vatican may die off. We have 0 death in Vatican so far, but that doesn't mean in the coming 6 months nobody's going to die. The Pope himself may die from COVID. That's a possibility. Let's not rule that out. Anybody can die. This is COVID-19 that kills, yeah. Are Orthodox Jews responsible for New York's COVID-19 spread? That's today's title. The reason I have this title is because there is a discussion about that in New York right now. It's been going on for days. So I'm like, I'm giving you an update. COVID-19 update by Heerak is a daily show. I'm trying to keep you informed of what's going on in America and what are the serious discussions that are going on now in America and around the world related with COVID-19. So we cannot ignore important news that are related with COVID-19, whether it's happening in Manchester or Italy, Rome. Like if the Pope himself gets COVID and dies, I'm not going to ignore that. I'm going to talk about it. Or Cardinal Dolan of New York, if he died from COVID, I'm going to talk about it, obviously. You have 6 more months of flu season to go. A lot of leaders will die, including religious leaders like cardinals, maybe the Pope. Who knows? A lot of politicians will die. I think Joe Biden will die in the next 6 months from COVID-19. That's what I'm thinking. Let's see if I'm right or wrong, If Joe Biden dies, then, Kamala Harris becomes the president. So if you vote for Joe Biden, you're voting for Kamala Harris because there's a high chance that Joe Biden will die in the next 6 months in the flu season. Does he look like the kind of guy who's going to survive COVID-19 if he gets in? You know what I'm saying? You be the judge of that. So if you vote for Joe Biden, you're not really voting for Joe Biden. You're voting for Kamala Harris. You have 4 years of Kamala Harris. So if you are comfortable having Kamala Harris as your president, vote for Joe Biden. But if you do not want to have Kamala Harris as your president, then don't vote for Joe Biden. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat. It doesn't matter if you're Republican. It doesn't matter if you're independent. Same with President Donald Trump. There's a chance he will die from COVID-19 in the next 6 months. He says he recovered, but we don't know. Scientists don't know what happens inside your body once you have your COVID. So, President Trump really isn't safe until next June. We don't know. Maybe it's gone, maybe not. We don't know. We can't So if you vote for President Trump, then you may be ready to have Vice President Pence as your president if, in fact, COVID-19 comes back or it's laid in President Trump's body and it comes back and dies. Obviously, I don't want President Trump to die, but if he does, I'm just saying it could happen in the next 6 months. It could happen to Joe Biden. It could happen to Donald Trump. So you cannot think of this as a race between Trump and Biden, right? Because both of them, or one of them, could die in the next 6 months. And whoever wins, if he dies, then the vice president can become president. So you need to be voting not only for President Trump and President Biden, but for President Pence and President Harris. Because in the event that Joe Biden dies or President Trump dies after they win, then the vice president will become president and you have to be comfortable with that. So you're not just voting for the guy who's running to be president, you're voting for president and vice president to be president. You see what I'm saying? So if you don't feel comfortable with Mike Pence being president, don't vote for President Trump. If you don't feel comfortable with Kamala Harris becoming your president for the next 4 years, don't vote for Joe Biden, right? I mean, I'm just making a logical statement. You have to feel comfortable with the vice president because you may hate President Trump, but you may love Mike Pence. You may hate Joe Biden, but you may love Kamala Harris. You may love President Trump, but you may hate Mike Pence. You may love Joe Biden, but you may hate Kamala Harris. You have to vote knowing that there's high chance that President Trump and President Biden may not survive COVID-19 6 months of flu season. Because it's not just about COVID-19 either, right? I mean, there's other illnesses like flu, common cold, other viruses you could get and die from. President Trump has said the flu is more deadly than COVID-19. I mean, President Trump might have had flu shot, but he could get influenza A and die from that. We don't know. I mean, President Trump himself said influenza is more deadly than COVID-19. So it would be ironic if he survives COVID-19 but dies from influenza A, right? But that could happen. It could happen with President Trump. It could happen with Joe Biden. So what I'm saying is they're in the risk group. Their age group is in the risk group. Anybody who's over 70 is in the risk group, not only to die from COVID-19, but to die from flu or to die from pneumonia, So they're in that risk group for the next 6 months. Neither Trump or Biden are safe from death for the next 6 months. That's why if you're voting, you're voting for President Trump and President Pence, right? If you're voting for President Trump. And if you're voting for Joe Biden, you're voting for Joe Biden and President Joe Biden and President Kamala Harris, because there's a high chance that Joe Biden will die in the next 6 months from influenza A, influenza B, or COVID-19. There are a lot of things that can kill older people, unfortunately. Yeah. But anyway, in New York City right now, there's a discussion of COVID-19 and the Jewish community. So we cannot ignore this topic because it's a very serious topic that is being discussed in New York City. It's one of the central topics being discussed in New York City, and it's newsworthy. And it's happening. Everybody's talking about it in open in New York. And so we should talk about it. So the first article is, when COVID-19 rules are flouted by ultra-Orthodox Jews, it isn't anti-Semitism to call it out. And this article was written by a Jewish person who works for a Jewish journalist, who works as a journalist for a Jewish publication. But he also, obviously, like a lot of journalists, they also write for other media outlets. So J.J. Goldberg wrote this article, and the significant quote from this is, with the pandemic in its 8th month and restrictions cutting into the religious practices of a tight-knit, strictly observant subculture, it's understandable that weariness and impatience would set in. So he's being sympathetic to the Orthodox Jewish community. Unfortunately, that's leading to a growing sense in the community that it is being singled out unfairly for deprivation of its religious rights, often accompanied by open complaints of anti-Semitism as the cause of the lockdowns, right? I mean, sometimes people get stubborn and they'll do things just to spite you, and they do things even against their own self-interest or benefit just to spite you. And that may be playing a role here. I mean, obviously that's a speculation, and not everybody agrees even within the Orthodox Jewish community. Some think differently from others. Um, but certainly some are probably acting out of spite, and some are not. It's a and to continue, it's a dangerous misperception for both the ultra orthodox and their neighbors. The virus doesn't single out groups by religion, race, or national origin. It's an unbiased scourge. That's going to continue for the next 6 months. And I'm predicting that like over 1 million New Yorkers will die because they're not shutting down. It's spreading as we speak. Uh, and at a certain point, it's going to be a point of no return. Um, yeah, I mean, they might have already reached it, because each virus acts differently, and, the testing is not wide enough to keep track of how fast it's spreading. We don't really have contact tracing really well in place in New York. So everybody's kind of like stumbling in the dark over there in New York, unfortunately. Second article, Cuomo calls COVID-19 resurgence an ultra-Orthodox Jewish problem. So I guess Cuomo is trying to find the final solution to the Jewish problem in New York, because the article title says Cuomo calls COVID-19 resurgence an ultra-Orthodox Jewish problem. And this article is by Carl Company in New York Post. It was a while ago, so you see how it's been over 7 days that this conflict has been going on, and discussion in media, out in the open, in public, has been going on for over 7 days. So the significant quote from this article is Governor Andrew Cuomo said the resurgence of the coronavirus in parts of New York is mainly an ultra-Orthodox Jewish problem. So he actually said that, according to this article, right? It's a quotation mark. Cuomo, during an interview on CNN Friday morning, was asked about a lawsuit filed by the Brooklyn Diocese and a Jewish advocacy group opposing his new COVID-19 safety restriction on gatherings and houses of worship as violating religious freedom. The cluster is predominantly an ultra-Orthodox cluster, Cuomo said. So he's kind of saying that, right? Explicitly, referring to conservatively devout Jewish sect. So interestingly enough, this article calls Orthodox Jews like a sect. So words have meaning, right? But Carl chose this specific word, sect, instead of a religious group. The sect connotes some kind of like extremism, right? So probably Carl is probably very liberal Democrat, and questions all religious groups, conservative religious groups. So he's calling it a sect. So this is not a matter of religious freedom, Cuomo says. And this is like Native American music. And as you know, there are over 100 nations, Native American nations, in America. But majority of them died through bacteria, virus, and fungi that Europeans brought with them. As I said, 1/3 of Europeans died from the Black Plague, right? And a lot of Europeans died from smallpox. Um, through the 2,000 years of European history, when they came to Americas, they brought, there were carriers, the vectors for these bacteria, virus, and fungi. And they killed off 100 different nations from the southern tip of South America to the northern tip of North America, like top area in Alaska. Nations died off from disease. So you don't think like 100 million Americans can't die from COVID. They can. It's scientifically possible. And we know this because 100 different nations, Native American nations, died off from disease, mostly. I mean, they had wars, but most of them died off from disease brought by European bacteria, virus, fungi. Yeah, so yeah, we're entering 6 months of hell. We're entering 6 months of death. And in New York, I'm predicting that million or more in New York City will die. It could be more than a million, it could be 2 million, because New York is very crowded. And we have 6 months to go. We're not just talking about month of April, we're talking about 6 months. It's like 8 months until like June. People are gonna die until June in large numbers in New York. So yeah, I mean, you can easily have 1 million, 2 million. Yeah, I mean, sky's the limit when it comes to COVID-19 death in New York. It's 100% guaranteed hospital beds will run out. But it's just a question of time, probably in November, October, November, who knows? Maybe December. But obviously before June 2021. Yeah, and this second flu season is far worse than first flu season. So what's going to happen in this flu season is going to make April 2020 look like Mickey Mouse, Disneyland. Disneyland phase of COVID-19, April 2020 in New York. Now we're entering like, the real, or deadlier phase of COVID-19. Now it's coming, yeah. I mean, flu season has just started. Give it time. You'll see what I mean. Yeah, I'll keep you updated. So this is a daily show. So tune in tomorrow as well for updates on COVID-19. I hope that your family will be well. The best thing to do is stay away from everybody, to socialize within your family unit. Don't meet physically with anyone else. Your people who don't live in your household, don't meet physically with them. Because if you do, your chances of getting COVID goes up, which means your chance of death goes up. You may not be in the 3 to 30 million people in America who die, but you could be. What you do will determine whether you survive or die, right? I mean, it is a direct impact on whether you survive or die. So I would recommend you socialize only with your family, the nuclear family in your household, people who actually physically live at your home. And with everyone else, just use Zoom, use Skype, use your video phone. That's the smart way to go. Yeah. Science is there, don't ignore it. Science says you will die by viral infection if you allow yourself to be infected and if it gets serious. Science is there. And what good is knowledge if you don't use it to survive, right? So I hope that your family will be well and your children will be well too.